We're going to talk about drawing arms, and mostly what I'm going to focus on is what type of basic shapes you want to think of when you're trying to draw the arms, okay? Because they have a certain form and the way they function. There's some simple shapes that you can use or even think of as you're trying to draw the arms that'll help you with getting some of the muscle groups to look a bit more realistic. Okay, so I did a little sketch here of an arm with the muscles. Okay, so there's the deltoid, bicep, brachialis, tricep, a whole bunch of forearm muscles, and then the hand. Okay, and so, something to think about is that, and it's something to think about too when you start learning how to draw legs, is that they actually function really similarly. Okay, so your muscle group here on the front of your arm, the bicep muscle, what it does is it bends your arm. So when you bend your arm, this muscle will contract, okay? And then your tricep will relax. And of course, when your arm is extended, then your tricep will contract and then your bicep will relax. So there's always something that's, kind of tensed up and then something else that's relaxed. And then the other thing I try to think of with muscles is that, they're attached in certain spots on your bones, of course with your tendons. And so they're, like that, I've heard the term used by other artists that they're like little rubber bands. Okay, so they're attached and then they get stretched and they're kind of twisted and then they get attached somewhere else. So, depending on how the arm turns, what you'll have is, you can count on the muscles being sort of consistent, even though they move and they change, because of course those are the things on the body that will move the most. That you can count on, knowing where they attach, and that spot's always going to be in the same spot, regardless of how the arm is, bent or what angle you're drawing it at. Okay, so we'll kind of come back to that in a little bit. So, okay, the most basic thing you can think of, and really, you can kind of think of it even as just, I always joke that, a good way to draw the figure is that you can kind of draw a little stick man, okay? So that'll help you get the angle that you need. Okay, but once you start trying to go and, flesh the figure out, what types of shapes do you think of? Well, a cylinder works pretty good. Okay, you can have a cylinder, of course, for the upper arm. You can kind of think of the elbow, sort of a little sphere that it pivots on. And then, of course, the forearm, you can think of it as a cylinder. You can kind of have it slope down a little bit as it gets to the bottom, like I did here. And then, of course, you can kind of use more of a little boxy cube shape for the hand and the fingers, okay? So, but something else I like to do, and I kind of sketched out here, is that, of course, your deltoid muscles, okay, they're always a little more round. So even when you're drawing them, if you kind of have that form already, so that as you start trying to kind of draw the muscles out, that's sort of the shape that you're seeing up there. And so then when the arm is, especially when it's extended, it's straight, okay, like I said, the bicep will be relaxed a little bit more. Of course, the tricep is, contracted a little bit more. But I kind of like thinking of this a little more of like a straight or, thinner form up here. And so sometimes, again, it depends if the arm's bent or not, but let's say in this particular position, if I start out with something like that, and again, something like this, which is just sort of that cube form, well, as I'm drawing this, and this is kind of, again, with you can see where the back of the hand is facing up, that I can use that form like that, just to help me get a sense of the bicep and then the brachialis, and I can always kind of add the tricep on towards the end there. Okay, and then as we get to the lower part of the arm, well, what's going to happen is that you tend to have more muscle and tissue up here, okay, because that's when you grip and you rotate your wrist, that's where most of the muscles are. They make that happen. And then as you get closer to the wrist, what tends to happen is you just tend to have more bone there. Okay, so I will sort of think of this as being a little bit more of a cylinder form. Okay, and then kind of like I was doing up here, and I feel like this form's a little longer, and like I said, you know, there just tends to be more bone there. Okay, so then when I go to draw this, you know, and again, you're not gonna very often, unless you're drawing superheroes or something, you're not gonna very often end up drawing every little muscle there. Okay, you'll see hints of them regardless of the body type, you know, or what you're drawing, but what's going to end up happening is that most of the time you're just kind of drawing an arm and you're trying to describe light. And then again, I like using this little boxy form for the hand, which of course I can kind of flesh out. I was like kind of showing the ulna bone there on the wrist, but I can kind of flesh this out and start attaching fingers on here. And I know I kind of got things at different proportions here. I'm just kind of sketching and so on, and keep making fingers there. Okay, so again, even though, you know, you might end up kind of going a little more to there, like if you're drawing someone's arm, you know, someone that doesn't, you know, isn't at like a bodybuilding magazine, might end up kind of drawing it a little more like that. Where again, it just looks more like a normal person. Or even if you're drawing characters, it may not necessarily look, you know, super muscular. It's okay. But again, you can see I'm, again, sort of approaching it with that same idea, because especially if I start putting some shading in here, you know, and I'll give a little more of a mass up here, and then, you know, I kind of start shrinking it down as I get down to the wrist there. Like I said, that basic approach works pretty good. At least it does for me. And then the other thing that is something you want to start thinking about as you're starting to learn muscles is that, well, your arm can rotate, of course, your hand can turn, and so you'll have the ulna bone and the radius in here. And so when you turn your wrist, what happens is really this one just kind of crisscrosses over it. Okay, you'll have something like this where, so there's the two bones. Just going to draw some generic looking bones. They look something like this inside your forearm. Well, of course, then what ends up happening, and that's why this is called the radius, because it's the one that actually rotates, is that after, so let's say when your wrist turns, essentially you have this, and they crisscross, okay? And so again, just remember your muscles and tendons are of course attached in a certain spot on the bones. Your muscles go to the tendons, and then the tendons are attached to certain parts on your bone. If the bone moves, then of course the muscle will move. So if you happen to have the arm in a way that your palm is flat, okay, so everything kind of moves. So you actually just really see the bicep there, and then you'll see just a little hint like the brachialis, maybe the tricep, but more or less like that. And so then, since now you'll have the wrist a bit more like this, then this shape kind of changes, and then I'm kind of running out of some room here, but essentially you'll have the hand there, and it's palm up. Your hand is going to be more palm up. Okay, so what ends up happening is you see more of the front of the arm, and so you'll see the bicep. And then some of the stuff that I add here on my other sketches are either really, you really see just a tiny amount. And to be honest, actually, depending on how much it's churned, you'll actually see you might see the tricep on this side. Okay. And so again, even the shape of the deltoid, because it attaches up here on the humerus, it's going to look a little different. Okay, where that little peak is, it's going to be a little more to the side. But like I had over here, so if you've got, the wrist rotated a little more, where you can actually see the, either the side of the hand a little more, or maybe even, even maybe see the back of the hand a little more. What's going to end up happening is that, just like I had over here, now the bicep is kind of pointed sideways, the brachialis, and then the tricep back over here. Okay, you'll see a bit of the bone, which is, your elbow basically. Okay, and so set all this rotated, then your muscles will tend to can kind of stretch. I move there. And then, again, since it's rotated now, depending on how much it's churned, you might see most of the back of the arm, or you might see it a little more of a side view like I had there earlier. Okay, and so again, just by this moving, it changes the look of a lot of this. Like I said, the little peak is now over here. There's a little more to the side, and then even this shape here changes a little bit different on the bicep. And so you're seeing it more from the side. And of course, you see more of the muscles that I'd kind of hinted at there. You'll see them on the side. Okay, so